Okay. Yeah, I think it's working now. Wonderful.
Okay, let's start.
All right. Okay.
I was going on panic. Here we are.
No need.
No need.
You see, Professor, knowing us means never having to panic.
That's great.
Yeah.
So now let me set my timetable because I don't want to be lost.
Okay. All right. And if I can get the attention now of our dear colleagues and friends and participants, if I can get all your attention, please, if you can get back now.
Kamal, sorry, one question. Do I have half an hour or what?
Okay, well, if you can do it in half an hour, that would be fantastic because I want them to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Half an hour is good, right? But that's not all. I mean, I am giving you more, but it's half an hour to present and then give them a chance to talk. And then I really need after that for everybody to rest a little bit before we start. So again, yeah. All right. So it is my pleasure to present to you this afternoon my dear friend and colleague, Professor Francesca Maria Corrao. She's a professor of Arabic culture and language at the Faculty of Political Science in Luis University of Rome. She's also the director of the Master Mislam, or MISLAM, Master in Economics and in Institutions of Islamic Countries of the School of Government at the same university. She is also the chair of the scientific committee of the Fondazione Orestiadi in Ghibellina in Sicily, and also another institution in Japan, a research member of the European Union of Arabists and Islamists, and a number of other institutions, including teachers of modern Arabic literature, European teachers of modern Arabic literature, and so on. Among her recent books, I'm going to just go for the English translation, History of Arab Poetry, and that was in 2020. And then she also has In War, Don't Ask for Me, Arab Poems After the Revolts and Beyond, and that's in 2018. Then Islam, State and Modernity. I think she has also Islam is Not Terrorism, 2017. Islam, State and Modernity, Muhammad Abid al-Jabiri and the Future of the Arab World, 2017. Islam, Religion and Politics. And my very favorite in all of this, and I cannot wait until I get hold of this book myself, is her book on Jofa, il furbo, la socioco. Yes, il saggio. Joha, the cunning, the fool, and the wise. And that was published in 2006. It is now available in English, in French, and Arabic, 2020. I'm going to ask you immediately, is there an English translation?
An English translation? No, not yet.
We should really talk about this. We should Okay, we should really get this to be published in English as well. This is it's wonderful, and you would be delighted to know that later on, before we conclude and we say goodbye to everybody, I am going to suggest that we will have that we have next conference on the character of Joha.
Wow.
And, yeah, literature and the comic, and the reason why is that it seems to be somebody uniting all of us. This character I mean, if this character is making people in Cairo laugh, and people in Sicily laugh, and people in Armenia laugh, and in modern day Tehran laugh, and in Istanbul, then there's something totally magical about this character. And look at us, we are multicultural, multilingual, and multidisciplinary group of people. This is going to be the kind of figure that would unite all of us and would actually yield wonderful, humorous stuff that can brighten 2021. The Lord knows we need something to put a smile on our face. Right, my dear friend? All right, very good. So the floor is totally yours, and we're very eager to hear your presentation about the Poetic of Maram al-Masri.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this beautiful presentation. I'm very honored, and I'm شكرا جزيلا الكل. وحتحدث باللغة العربية الإنجليزية لأن لا أريد أن بلخبط بالعربي. Out of emotion. So why Maramel Mastery? Because I'll be very short. I met Nawal Saadawi my first time. I was in Cairo in 1977, and I was just very young, and I was amazed because she opened my eyes, because at that time in Italy we were fighting for rights, and at the moment she was talking about her fights about rights and respect and dignity, she was speaking the same language we used to in Italy. And especially at that time there was a woman in Italy, her name is Franca Viola, and she had the courage to refuse to marry the man who had raped her. And this was a habit we had in Italy as well, that if a man rape a woman, she has the honor to marry him. So this honor crime was spread, as it is spread all over the world, but in the Mediterranean was not something labeled by Islamic. It was just everywhere, and that made me really that gave me the feeling that I had to do something to build dialogue, you know, to destroy prejudice and start translating in order to learn more. And of course, I met many professors like Ferial Rasoul, like Soher Kalamawi, and many other women, and I really learned a lot. But I'm more specialized in poetry rather than in novels, and then that is why I choose to speak and write most of my works on these topics, except Joha, obviously. And what is interesting is why Maramel Mastery. Maramel Mastery, she's a Syrian, but she lives in Paris since many years. She had a terrible story in her life because she was a strange woman and she behaved in a strange way, and the society didn't accept her. And so her fights in words, in poems, it reminded me very much of Nawal. And I do thank the colleague that yesterday was speaking about Nawal and her travel, because what I found in common between Maram and Nawal, which of course we find it also in many other Arab poets, like I'm thinking like Etel Adnan, for instance, that they do share with the Western women suffering, pains, and joy. I mean, there is not because you are European, you don't have this problem, or we have these problems because we are Muslim. No. We are universal suffering. And in fact, my first slide speaks about that. Yeah? From birth to death, women sing essential moment of human life to remember. Because nothing maintains exactly the same state for even the briefest instant. And that is very clear in a woman. just making a very silly example. No, we start cooking, it takes 3 hours, in 5 minutes, the whole thing is over. It is a sense of renaissance, which is continuous, no? And so since everything changes continuously, we are aware of our destiny. Separation is among the great sufferings of life. And women know how terrible it can be, because the worst thing is to be separate from their children, no? But we suffer when our dearest die or leave. Both humans and things are subject to the erosive effects of time. And the first crying for her brother's death and renown all over the world is Alhamsa. Of course, I don't need to remind you of Alhamsa. She's so known that even Fadwa Tukan used the beginning of a poem on memory of Ibrahim, her boy, her brother, mentioning Fadwa al-Khansa. But why? Because poetry transforms the limited life of human being and makes it immortal. So this is a beautiful thing, writers and poets give voice to individual sufferings and make it universal. That is the major point of our conference, because this is what we've been discussing about in this past day. But of course, Arab women, they have not been speaking only about the people of their family who were killed. It's enough to have a look at the Kitab al-Aghani by Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani, or to read the beautiful poems by Wallada bint al-Mustakfi in Al-Andalus, or the mystical poetry of Rabi al-Adawiya. And we arrive to nowadays, and we find that is a very important shift, because the new writers and poets, they're not writing only about their clan, their community, their family. They're talking to the universe. They're talking about a universal pain, that it is not divided by nation or by religion or ethnicity. And where we find it in Nazik al-Malaika or Nawal al-Saadawi. And why? Because they are able to transform a personal drama and give voice to the voiceless, inspiring solidarity and compassion. So just, of course, you know all of them, but I wanted to mention, because otherwise someone could pick up and say, but why Maramel Mastery? We are full of wonderful poets, and you pick up this young girl. She's my age, but anyway, we are young girls, and because she's been living between East and West, and because she's been suffering specific things, and in her writings, I found out an interesting mixing up of styles and structures from also a linguistic point of view. So I just will remember that before this young generation, we have really an important number of fantastic women, from Aisha Tarumuria, before we were talking about Mary Ajami or Meiziada, and then of course Fadwa Tukan, Salma Jayuzi, Sania Saleh, Adnan, Imam Mersal, Fatma Kandil. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of fantastic women. But let's go to women's and human drama, from a personal disgrace to universal awareness. Maybe you might remember the beautiful poem by Manasi Malaika, To Wash Disgrace. That was an act of courage against the honor killing. So she wrote it in the 50s, and so we find that the Saudawi, that she's a bit younger than Nazik al-Malaika, Allah yarhamha, she had the courage to pick up and write. What does it mean? It means that Nawal Saadawi, she's an extraordinary woman, and she is coming out with a generation of extraordinary women. And this is what she writes about the genital mutilation. Bedur, did you have to die for some light to shine? in the dark mines? Did you have to pay with your dear life a price for doctors and clerics to learn that the right religion doesn't cut children's organs? And this has, again, nothing to see with religion, because it is practiced both by Christians and Muslim. Or anyway, this kind of violence is real nonsense. And she has the courage to say it. So we have a fight. This is a beautiful nukta by Amrosh Okasha, is an Egyptian. You see, before engagement, after engagement, and after marriage is quite clear. And believe me, is not only a problem that our Amr Okasha finds in Egypt, but you find it elsewhere in the world. So what is the patriarchal mentality against women's rights, against honor crime, polygamy, genital mutilation, and what are we fighting for? Western customs, but then it is a problem. Of course, why Western custom? We can have our custom. Absolutely right. Why not? In Europe, we had decades of nonsense discussion whether it is possible to wear a niqab or not, or hijab or not. But they all forget that many nuns, they're wearing a hijab and nobody's complaining. But anyway, liberal education, that is very important, because without education there is no empowerment. And work, because without money there is no freedom. That's evident. But this is, here we come to the right to choose. The right to choose. It's not the right to choose to wear or to wear not clothes, or to work or not to work. It's the question to choose to live, to breathe, to have own ideas. And what is the style of Maramel Mastery? It is extremely interesting, because she has short sentences, simple images, like short shots from a film. And from a short shots, she can pass from the detail and give an idea of the universal. Like in her first collection, I Alerted You with a White Dove, that is a collection published with her brother Mundir al-Masri. Women like me don't know words. The word remains in her throat like a thorn. It's clear. We, as somebody else said before, which is very precise of Nawal, it is not question that I am unfortunate or unfortunate, or if I am free or not. I am all these things according to my life experience. I must pass from one situation to another. But something we have, and it is very difficult to do, is to take out from our throat a word, because centuries of feeling powerless, of feeling unheard, that is the problem. That is our problem, something we have to fight for. And Nawal is a great example. And in fact, I was amazed when she wrote, speaking about Firdaus, saying, I have no courage. That woman had much more courage than me. I mean, she killed the man, which is not a good thing to do. But in the sense, you have to fight to get your rights. And what does she write? Maramel Mastery, just she introduces herself. When I received my first slap that halas had to be followed by many others, physical or moral, as it happened to so many women who practice every day a form of corporal or mental cruelty. What did I do? I cried bitterly for helplessness, and still today I feel anger at what I'm being told. I can't help but suffer. But this has enabled me to have a more acute knowledge of the human race and to communicate more closely with all those who suffer from violence. It is not only women who are victims, but also entire peoples, children, the elderly, the downtrodden, the humiliated, of every kind and of every country. The day I felt a hot liquid running between my legs, I decided that no one in the world had the right to threaten me, not even with their voice. From that humiliation, from that suffering so long ago, to which was added the deprival of my first son, the woman I am was born. A woman who doesn't know how to slap back, but who knows that there is a way out, an immediate sublimation of all the squalor immediately. This overcoming of the human condition through the female condition is poetry. That's for her. So, principle of human rights to real life. This is a passage. Beautiful theories and difficult realities. Innate freedom and equality. Ban on discrimination. For the patriarchal communities, marginalization and condemnation are not enough. It's not enough because her life, Maram life, was a scandal. No? So she decided to affirm the right to live, to write, to think, and become aware of her needs and rights. Even these were seen as shameful, no? Because Maram, she knows the structural violence, because it is considered to be normal. It is a way of living, because it emerges from the social institution. It is in the norms of moral codes, whether they're written or belong to oral tradition. A woman that refuses this obligation is destined to live a difficult life, as she writes. Women like me know nothing but tears, like a lion in cage, dreams of freedom. Freedom in writing. In her verses, passion pulses from the heart. She does not intend to turn against the system, but declaring her passion to the world. And that is a way of breaking rules. And we know how it is dangerous to break rules. And it is not a modern story. Just think about Majnun Layla. They broke a rule and they were crying, but they remain forever in life, in poetry. And in poetry. My desire inflames and my eyes shine. I put my morals in the closest drawer. I turn into devil and I blindfold the eyes of my angels for a kiss. And this is difficult to say openly. It is difficult because the moment you say that, immediately they will all think very bad about you because you're a bad woman. I mean, I don't know in the Arab world, but certainly it was in Italy until a couple of decades ago. And the protest focuses also on another important problem, the difficulties that still characterize the relationship between men and women in modern society. Even when he loves her, he doesn't know how to deal with an emancipated woman. He doesn't understand her language and her needs. I mean, there are men who are doing the effort to understand, who are very sensitive, but not all of them. I mean, Italy is a very macho-chauvinist country. That's why I'm talking about that. I mean, not to complain, but just to look at reality, how things are, how difficult it is to be a woman in a country where they're very macho-chauvinist, even if with a hidden image of freedom. And also here, dialogue is still very difficult. Let's read what she says. I wait. What do I expect? A man full of flowers and sweet words? A man who looks at me and sees me, who speaks to me and listens to me? A man who weeps for me? I pity him and I love him. In the end, you always find out the solution because otherwise you remain alone. And this is what comes out from her poems. And she is a special woman, not because she's the only one, but because she was among the few who wrote about the problem of meeting the other, because meeting the other is not only meeting a man, it is also meeting a other that is a society, is another mentality, another way of being, which can be beautiful. And this is what happened to Nawal, that was singing and crying when she traveled abroad and felt that women had the same ideas. Like when it happened, she went to Moscow, I think. This is what we were listening yesterday, right? And this is what has this meeting the other, what provoked in Maramel Mastery production. She was shaken in her original identity, no? But this being shaken produced the experience of feeling lost also. She writes in Arabic and in French, and that in doing that, she's breaking natural linguistic borders. In this, we find the double infraction codes, no? Because she opens the door of the Arabic language and breaks through the isolation felt in living in a foreign country. A woman who had the courage to challenge her cultural tradition, now not only physical, but also from a linguistic point of view. This choice, of course, has a price, because she experiences a new condition of cultural alienation, because her production is considered alien to her own world. And this we knew. I just remember something like 20 years ago, I was at an international conference with Arab and Italian and German expert in Arabic literature, and we were talking about Arab writers writing in French. One of the most important Egyptian critic, I will not mention his name because he's a very good friend of mine, but I disagree. And I told him that I disagree. He said, but this is not an Arab writer because he writes in French. Oh my God. So what? So what? I mean, we know that colonialism has left an important trace, no?
Legacy.
Eh?
Legacy.
Legacy, yes, legacy. So,
legado.
Grazie. Thank you very much. Sometimes I get lost with the words. Okay. So, and in this expression, in a different language, anyway, it is expressing the feeling of a world, of a period of life. Now it's going to change again, but many countries have been changing languages. And there is something very important the poet can do. They can break the borders. Recently, an Italian poet whose name is Valerio Magrelli, he published the 1,000 poets. It is an encyclopedia with all the Italian poems and poets, the most important, of course. And it's starting with the one who would write in Greek, in Latin, in Arabic, and then in Italian, or in the different Italian dialects, including all of them. And it was fantastic. It was the first time that the Arab poets in Sicily were considered to be Italian. Why not? They speak Arabic. So what? How many words we still have in Arab in our Sicilian dialect? So what is the problem of being abroad? It's loneliness. It is a devastating loneliness. And this is a serious problem, because this is a Western society problem. And in fact, that's what she writes. I knock on the door. Who will be? I had the dust of my loneliness under my carpet. I fix a smile and I open. That is cruel, how it can describe this problem. So the sorrow of her condition, it doesn't prevail. I mean, she's not just thinking about herself, because being abroad, she met with women from all over the world, and she records all the suffering of these women. And she wrote beautiful poems of women coming from Vietnam or from France, old women abandoned, or poor people in the road. And in this beautiful anthology, we find this sensibility toward sorrow, other people's pain. We just read this very fast. Flora, daughter of Florence, age 6 years. I don't like going to school. I'm afraid to come back and never find mom again. So beautiful. The interesting thing of this anthology is that she has organized the anthology with poems of 1, maximum 2 pages. And at the beginning, as you see here, there is the name, daughter of, age, as if it is an identity card. And here we have a clear reference to the famous poem by Mahmoud Darwish, Identity Card. And this is not the only reference we have to Mahmoud Darwish poems. We will find others. If we have time, I will show you. But it is interesting because this identity card, it is not a national, but it is human. And it is connected to the closest, dearest feelings in life. Mother and father, and the work, the job. This is the other one is very interesting. This is a Vietnamese woman who married a French, and then she's left alone with her kid, and she doesn't speak the language. Again, as we see in this new identity card, we read Au Pam, mother Achanok, father Cheng, age 32 years old, profession, financial journalist. And it is amazing. In few lines, she described how a woman with an important profession left her world, her country, her jobs, and she became a slave for love. It's really fantastic, but we don't have much time. I will love to read all of the poems, but we will have the pleasure later, inshallah. Language, it becomes a tool to communicate despair. And when the civil war exploded, Maramel Mastery shifted to the Syrian drama, writing on the suffering of the victims of war and the refugees. She records every little detail that can trigger the memory to console the orphan, the widow, the dispossessed. The poet gives voice to the voiceless, narrates the unspeakable. 15 March 2013, 5,000 children killed. He doesn't come from the womb of his mother, this newborn, but from the belly of the earth. He is not the statuette of antiquity, but a newborn in swaddling white clothes, buried with a bomb. He didn't have the time to take for the first time the milks of his mother. What a tragic violation of rights. And this is the voice of a father. The arms dropped, hands almost turned to heaven, as if not even in God he had found an answer to his questions, his anguish. I think he turned 1,000 times around himself, out of despair, who struck him, who killed him, how they killed, the bombs of abuse, his children. And this is the last one because it's so beautiful. It gives the idea of how powerful women can be. She arrives naked, freedom. From the top of Syrian mountains, in the refugee camps, her feet drown in the mud, the hand ruined by cold and pain, yet she advances, passes. Her kids are grabbing her arms, fall down as they run, cries. Though she advances, her feet broke, but she keeps advancing. Her throat is cut, but she does not stop singing. This dramatic association between freedom and woman, it is an important step forward. if again we remember the beautiful poem by Mahmoud Darwish, where he associates his woman to his country. So now, what is the most important thing is freedom for Maram, whose country doesn't seem to be there any longer. I mean, the kind of country she remembered, the kind of country she had in her heart. But there is still hope. Some women are fighting against the collusion between religious authority and political power. Education activates a process of soft power. The unleashing of the inner energies of the individual have, since ancient times, been considered the proper province of philosophy in the broadest sense, rooted in the spiritual and religious nature of humankind. Women's soft power is based on the inner generated energy deriving from the internal urge that is created through consensus and satisfaction among human beings. As Mahatma Gandhi used to say, women can reach goals being nonviolent. Al-Masri does not show only despair. It also opens to hope. It looks to the strength and courage of women who can make her way to a new future. And she writes, I was walking tired. I looked behind me and I saw I was dragging with my right hand a mountain of sadness and my left hand a mountain of hope. Conveying the joy of life and feeling of lightness, even in the darkest moment, gives courage and hope. A general sense of gratitude for the world and human beings is what gives her a refound sense of fulfillment and joy. As she writes in the final verse of the book, the anthology I was mentioning, thanks to all those who loved me, and to all who hated me, and those who have forsaken me, and to those I have forsaken. Every time they set me on fire and rekindled in me desire, there are those I forgot, and those I'll never forget. They didn't stop me venture every time to love again. So the qualities exalted in her poetry of Maramel Mastery are ancient virtues useful to promote a culture of peace and respect, their tolerance, compassion, solidarity, and gratitude. Throughout all her work, these qualities are woven with the central thread, like the ones of Saudawi's conviction, the need to educate, to listen, to learn how to support others in order to build a culture of justice and peace. Virtues that each of us must develop to spread a culture of peace, as stated by the Japanese poet-philosopher Daisaku Ikeda. In al-Masri collection of short prose pieces, The Woman with the Red Suitcase, she talks to her suitcase with a joyful dialogue, recalling her travels, her illusion, her sorrow of love. The red suitcase contains all her memory. She travels to meet people, and she carries in her suitcase a little bit of her world. A woman walks in the city. She is followed by a red suitcase in which her change of clothes, her dreams, her past are kept, her life, her country. The general tone of her book is playful, ironic, even where it deals with the bitterest moment, abandonment, disillusion of lone and loneliness. She shares them smiling with her only friend, the red suitcase. Al-Masri shares a life experience with a message of hope and confidence in life, like Sadawi's closes her novel Al-Hubb fi Zaman al-Naft, Love in the Time of Oil, with a smile. Even in the darkest situation, there is always a spark of hope. And this is what Nawal Saadawi writes. But when she heard him laugh, she laughed too. Life seemed better than it had been before. As long as the man is able to laugh, the woman will have no desire to run away. At least not tonight. He'll keep sleeping and try again tomorrow. Through the working of genuine dialogue, opposing perspectives are transformed from that which divides and sunders people into that which forges a deeper union between them. And I started with an image of a painting by Simon Fattal, Syrian painter, and I close with an Iraqi great architect, Zaha Hadid. This is the Rome Museum Maxi. And my last comment is that in the East-West dialogue, invisible women have a powerful writers on their side. Art is a powerful tool for dialogue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let us all clap for the professor. Okay, and I'll ask you if you would like to have any commentary, or if you would like to have or to ask a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Francesca.
Okay,
I can't hear you well. Can you speak loud?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Francesca, for this great presentation.
Great.
When I was an undergraduate student, I tried to approach Maram Mastery poems, but I don't know why now I can get her poetic better than last time. Maybe because it is the immediate language. Because in Arabic, they don't look like this, sparkle like this, poetic.
Yeah.
Or maybe my tools are developed from that time to now. But it's very, very. Although her brother is a friend of mine, Monder.
Yeah. I know.
But I can't discover her poetic, actually. Thank you so much. But I don't know about language. How's the language between Arabic and English is different?
Yeah, that thank you very much. You know, I'll tell you a story if I have a few minutes, because that's interesting. When I first met Maramel Mastery, it was 20 years ago. It was the 90s, and it was in Switzerland, and it was a conference on Mutanabbi. Can you imagine what
Al-Mutanabbi, yeah.
Possible? And at that time, I felt that woman had two simple words, too simple to me, because used with Mutanabbi, of course, it's out of discussion. But the great is that she touched my heart, and I say, what's going on? So at the very beginning, I just translated one poem to her because I was asked to write an article on women poetry. And since she was a woman, Arab, and living in Europe, and we're always talking about men, Arab, living in Europe, I said, we need a woman. Let's speak about her. And by the time I kept being in touch with her production, and I discovered this important radical change in the structure. It is a very, very poor structure because it is like a shortcut of the film, of the movies. And since we are used to the traditional, which is very important, that has nothing to see, there are two language, two world. It is a modern world. It is extremely innovative. And that is why it is difficult to put together Monder poetry and Maram. So they think, of course, Monder is much better than Maram. They're two different worlds, okay? It is two different worlds. But the role of the poet is to touch the heart and to speak to the world. And the language, here you are beautiful, your question, the problem of, she writes in Arabic and in French. Why? Because she wants to touch the heart of people. She lives in Europe and she writes for them in French and in Arabic because she is also speaking to the Arabs who are living there. And that is the real challenge, to work with 2-3 languages at the same time. that is not an easy task. It is like Gibran Khalil Gibran,
Yeah.
to give an example.
Yes.
Or another, there are, now it doesn't come to my mind, but there is a famous Western poet who write both in English and in French.
And maybe Condera in the
Yeah, bravo.
narrative.
Exactly. I mean, it is part of our time, of this time. So, of course, I entirely agree with you. I mean, there are poets who have an Arabic style which is beautiful. I mean, I was listening to your beautiful Arabic speaking, and I was dying of jealousy, would say my friend Kamal. عشان ما عنديش وقت.
Okay, thank you for this explanation.
I have a question. Francesca. So you touch the Arab writers who write in another language. So it means this is for me is controversial term. You know, to be an Arab and to write in another language. If you express your experience as an Arab, so you are an Arab writer writing in another language. But if you are like writing in another language, express your experience about other language as another nationality. So do you consider that Arab writer? Because I am here in America and we have like Arab American writers who they relate to their, for example, Anton Sinan or Sinan Anton, Gibran Khalil Gibran, Dunya Mikhail. So they have their experience as an Arab completed before they left their countries. Yeah. But for example, my kids, so new generation. So all their information about America. Do you consider them Arab writers if they start writing? What do you think? Because myself, I agree with you. Myself as a writer, I am seeking another audience, Western audience. I have like an Arab audience, but now I am seeking a Western audience. So I consider myself Arab American writer. But still, it means the language is the how we are able to communicate, to send our message. But do you think the message is still Arab message or different flavor? What do you think? Because really, I love when you said your best friend said they are Arab when they write in another language, it means they lost their like flavor as Arab, right? But myself, I feel like it's still controversial.
Yeah, it is controversial, and I do thank you very much for this feeling, because I've got the same problem. I mean, I write in Arabic and English better than what I speak, and it is a question also of culture. You know, when you read Gibran Khalil Gibran, if you don't have in mind the Arab, the Middle Eastern culture, you missed 90% of his poetry. Okay? The feeling are universal. That's it. Full stop. The feeling of the poet are universal. And this is the writer. They're speaking, I mean, otherwise we wouldn't read Dante Alighieri. We wouldn't read Mutanabbi, no? It's universal. There is no space, no time. And this is what I mentioned in my paper. Hauser, a famous critic of literature and art of Germany at the beginning of last century, he was writing that the artist starts from a place, but then this place becomes the expression of his creativity. The place is not the place anymore. So for your writing, you see you are a double culture. You have a backstage a backstage of memories working in your creativity. But the moment you express your creativity, your movements, your tones, your words will be expressed in a language, because it is in communicating that you become a writer or a poet. You're not only writing for yourself.
Absolutely. And this is like a controversial term because, for example, I am Iraqi, and the Iraqi people, they don't consider me as a full Iraqi person. They said you are like outsider Iraqi, we have insider Iraqi, because we miss the most important part of to be Iraqi, to have like a full experience about that. Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
May I say?
We live in a globalized world, no?
I know, and I didn't mean the database of the literature. Literature is a has a universal message. I agree with you. Yeah.
Professor, may I add a little bit of comment?
Yeah, please.
Well, Dr. Wujdan is referring to the fact that she is an Iraqi but living in the States. And I may just suggest that when we consider somebody an Arab writer, it depends on, is it an Arabic literature or an Arab literature? Here, the decisive issue is the voice of the writer. What do you want to communicate to the other, to the audience? It does not matter what language you use, whether English or French or Arabic. What matters is the theme and the case you are communicating. We know that themes are universal, as Professor said. The universal themes are possibly common in all cultures, but it depends on you. What do you want to say? What do you want to tell your audience? So here comes the voice of the writer. Possibly the professor referred to what we call the mood of the writer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It's exactly, yeah.
Yes. Okay, we can very quickly also think of major figures in literature, such as Joseph Conrad. You know, remember that Joseph Conrad was not English.
Yeah.
All right. And yet, I don't know why it's not raised, the issue about whether this is part of the English language literature. The canon is not raised in this case. But anyway, so you have this. But let me complicate issues and suggest to you a major Arab, Palestinian, Israeli citizen, Anton Shammas. He writes in Hebrew. So what do you make of that? And of course, his reading, his books and his novels are actually read and savored, and they are part and parcel of the contemporary Israeli literature. So what do you make of that? So sometimes this issue is complicated not only by voice or language and so on. Yes.
Kamal, but Anton Shammas, he's my colleague, and so his writing, I think, as Francesca said, so he's writing in Hebrew, but he expressed his feeling as an Arab writer.
No, I understand. I understand. But
for example, his novel Arabesca, right? His novel Arabesca. So Arabesca, but yes. in translation they translated to Arabesca.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so I think I read his novel. Actually, all of it about the Palestinian family.
Yes.
But he wrote it in another language. He expressed himself as an Arab writer in another language.
Right.
So I cannot consider Anton Shammas out of the Arab literary scene. He's part of the literary scene.
Right, but my question is that, is he not also part of the contemporary Israeli literature corpus?
He's a translator. He's not like, he did not like express, I got your point. Okay.
He is. So some of them are even given prizes by the state of Israel, like Emil Habibi. It's a large issue. All right. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, in addition to the issue of identity, which is a very interesting topic, everybody is chipping in. Shahla's comment also makes me think more of the role of translation and the impact of translation on a traveling meaning from, say, Arabic to English or any other language. And here I always think of Goethe, you know, the German Goethe, who himself said that he preferred himself in French. when his poetry was translated and he read the translation of his own poetry, he said, "Oh, I love myself more in French." So I think about what we gain in translation, I suppose, to what we lose in translation, because both are there. Translation can make us lose sometimes, but sometimes we gain a lot.
Yes.
So Shahla's comment, Shahla, yeah, when she talked about how she didn't like Maram when she read her a few years ago in Arabic, but now the translation made her see something she didn't see. So this is an example of what we can gain in translation.
And even to add to this and tell you that sometimes translation is what makes the work important. Look at us as Arabs for centuries ignoring the Arabian Nights. And then 1706, a French translation by Antoine Galland appeared. And then lo and behold, we started to pay attention to this treasure. Ibn Khaldun was not known to us. We were not really appreciating it until the 19th century. The French colonialists pay attention to him. So I think sometimes, of course, there's power also gain here, depending on who is translating you. Sometimes that would make the work, or would actually put some emphasis on the work. So it's a wonderful. I mean, I'm trying to control the time, but I cannot control our enthusiasm to discuss these wonderful issues. All right, and so we want to thank once again our dear friend and colleague, Professor Francesca, and let's clap now for her again. All right, she deserves that. And I care so much about your level of energy and mine too. So let